We now go over to the Russell Senate Office Building, where we're joined by the top Republican on the Senate Armed Services Committee, Senator James Inhofe, a Republican of Oklahoma. Sir, let's just begin with the headlines in the paper, and President Obama talked about this in his State of the Union address. Pyongyang raises the stakes with its third nuclear test. What should be our policy toward North Korea?
Well, first of all, we've got to keep in mind, Greta, that there's a real serious problem. I can go all the way back to 1998, back when I was watching North Korea develop this nuclear capability. And they actually did a multi-stage rocket back then when they said it'd be 15 years. Our intelligence said it'd be 15 years before they could do it. So our intelligence has always been slow in that. We've got to demonstrate very clearly that we're going to keep, number one, our nuclear arsenal going, and number two, our missile defense system in place. Now, I have to be very critical of President Obama in that he's just kind of decimated our whole defense system. But in the area of our nuclear capability, you have to keep in mind, Greta, do you remember the conversation he had with Medvedev? When he said, you can tell Putin that after I'm reelected, I'll have more latitude to do these things. Well, this is the problem I see, because he's talking about disarmament. And so I would say the lesson we learned from this is those guys are serious. It's no longer like it was in the Cold War, where we had the Soviet Union and the United States. I look wistfully back in those days because they were predictable. We knew what they had. Now other countries, North Korea, Syria, well, Iran, probably the most serious one right now, developing this capability. Once they develop it, they trade it with other people of that Middle East mindset. So it's very serious. What we need to do right now is be sure that we are starting to modernize our nuclear arsenal and make sure that we get the adequate number of ground-based interceptors. One of the things that I'm most critical 4 years ago in the first budget that President Obama had, not only was he disarming America, doing away with our only fifth-generation fighter, doing away with our lift capacity, the C-17, doing away with the future combat system, but he took down the ground-based interceptor in Poland. Now, we were building that in order to protect America against something coming in from the East Coast. We have ground-based interceptors all along the West Coast, from Alaska down to Southern California, but we don't have any on the other side. So if something comes from that direction, and in my mind right now, I'm thinking of Iran, because our intelligence shows us that they're going to have that capability by 2015. I'm not satisfied with the level of protection that we have from that end.
And Senator, this is one of the reasons why you are opposed to the nomination of Chuck Hagel to be Defense Secretary. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. There's a zero movement. It's a club he belongs to. It's a nuclear disarmament mentality. And, I loved Chuck Hagel and all of that. He was made great sacrifices in the service. But Greta, anyone who joins the group that says, we want to have a nuclear-free world, it sounds so good, but you don't lead by example. You don't say, we're going to do away with ours, because then we know that China and Russia and North Korea and Iran are all going to do away with their capability. And so, yes, that's one of the objections I have to Chuck Hagel, his nomination.
And you have said that to the papers that you would wage a filibuster against his nomination. It looks, though, according to the Baltimore Sun, that all 53 Democrats plus 2 independents and 2 of your colleagues are also willing to support his nomination. That gets him to 60.
Well, let me correct you first. No, I'm not filibustering. All you have to do is demand a 60-vote margin. I'm doing that. And so there's, in fact, almost all controversial appointments, and I'm talking about cabinet level appointments, end up, or many of them end up with a 60-vote margin. So that's what we want. Yeah, you may be right. They may be right there on 60, and if so, you're going to see a lot of people change their vote so they can be on the prevailing side. That's something that that is quite common. So, but I'm just saying, with the problems that I have with him and the problems that the Republicans, let's keep in mind, yesterday we had a vote every one of the Republicans voted against his confirmation. And the reason is varied, you know, partially from what we just now talked about, but also partially with his close relationship with countries like Iran, statements that he has made about Iran in the past, and the problem that many people have, his attitude toward Israel. When he sat on Al Jazeera and agreed with Al Jazeera TV that Israel is guilty of war crimes. And this is the type of thing that we find very objectionable.
On Afghanistan, the president plans to cut the troop level at a quicker pace out of that country. Your reaction? Well,
my reaction is I like to get my reaction from the service chiefs and from those mid-level officers and enlisted personnel. When I go to Afghanistan, I sit down and I talk to these guys in the mess hall. I talk to the captains in the field. I talk to the commanders. And so what I would rather he do is not put up a target as to how much he's going to do and have it budget driven, which this is. Instead, have it driven by the commanders in the field about the risk. Well, I can't tell you what the risk is going to be, next week or the week after or the next month. But I do know that we need to be taking that information from the commanders in the field.
The Washington Post says that the president put this forward based on a recommendation from General Allen, and that this was the preferred option by the general.
Well, you got to keep in mind that you have to look at how many options did the general get to consider. I know General Allen. I have a great deal of respect. Let's keep one thing in mind, Greta. He is a soldier. He is military. He works for and salutes the commander-in-chief. That's what he's supposed to be doing. The commander-in-chief happens to be Obama. So many of the times, and I'd say, well, quite a few of the times, maybe not most of the times, when we have a hearing in Washington, the military will respond. Normally, they're massaged pretty well by the commander-in-chief, and they pretty much fortify whatever policy that he has. I think a good example is all the stuff that happened in Benghazi. You know, we knew at the time, absolutely, unequivocally, as the Secretary of Defense said, on the night of the attack of the annex over there, we knew this was an organized terrorist attack, and yet 5 days later, they come on all over TV, and this is coming from the president, saying, oh no, this is just something due to a video that was out there. So you have to be careful about this. It could be true with any president, not just Obama, but they're going to reflect his vision, and that's what's happening right now.
Senator Inhofe, on sequestration and cuts to the Defense Department, those automatic cuts, are you willing to agree to closing corporate loopholes, other tax loopholes in order to avoid the cuts to the military?
Well, Greta, I know you believe that, or you wouldn't ask the question the way you did. I don't believe that. You can talk about loopholes, you can talk about raising taxes, corporate taxes. All these things have the effect of increasing the price of goods and services that are going to end up in the public, and the public's going to pay for it. Just like his thing on the minimum wage last night, you know who's going to pay for the minimum wage increase. It's going to be you and me and everyone who's watching this right now. So I would like to, it sounds good. The liberals love to say, oh, we got to stop fraud and abuse and loopholes. That's going to solve all of our problems. But it's not, and let's don't kid ourselves.
All right, Sean in Mertztown, Pennsylvania, a Republican caller. Hi, Sean.
Good morning. My question is on with the NAFTA Act, that we have a lot of free trade going on, that we're supporting the overseas economies that are bolstering that part of the groups that are over there, because we're putting money into their groups by moving our manufacturing outfits over there to support their economies.
Well, let me first of all say to the caller that I was one of those who voted against NAFTA. That was back in 1994. And in fact, I led the cause. And the reason I did was that I wanted to be sure that other countries were imposed. For example, in Mexico, and that's what NAFTA was really all about, they had standards of transportation. We have laws in this country that talk about safety standards, talk about all these standards that they didn't have to comply with. So it is not equal, it was not fair competition. So I opposed it. On the other hand, in Central America, we are actually, I feel differently about that because we're the beneficiary. We're actually going to be importing or exporting more than we're importing in those countries, and so I think that would be good. So you almost have to pick and choose, but if you're concerned about moving moving manufacturing overseas, the thing last night you should have been listening to most carefully was the president saying, we don't care the fact that Congress, the House, and the Senate refused to pass a cap and trade global warming thing. We're going to do it with regulations. Well, the reason that they can't get the votes to pass that is because that would constitute the largest tax increase in the history of America. And that is something, I calculated that tax to be in my state of Oklahoma, to be $3,000 for each family who pays a federal income tax for my state of Oklahoma. Now, what do you get for it? If you're one of those who believes that greenhouse gases and these emissions are causing global warming or all of this, that's fine, you can believe it. But even if you believe that, this would not solve it. Lisa Jackson, the director of the EPA, in fact it's Obama's director, made the statement in response live on TV to my question. I said, if we pass this cap and trade, the global warming stuff, and it's going to cost, as we all know, about between $300 and $400 billion a year, largest tax increase in the history of this country. Is this going to reduce CO2 emissions? And she said, no, it won't. And the reason is, the problem isn't here, it's in China. It's in India, it's in Mexico, it's in other countries. Now, there is where you're going to have the problem with the manufacturing base moving overseas, I say to our caller, because they have to go where there is energy. And if we curtail our energy over here with that tax that won't reduce the emissions, still our manufacturing base is going to have to go someplace. That's where I see the real threat right now.
And as many of our viewers know, Senator Inhofe was the ranking member on the Environment and Public Works Committee, and now in the 113th Congress serving as the top Republican on the Senate Armed Services Committee. Bobby in Birmingham, Alabama, Democratic caller. Go ahead.
How you doing this morning, ma'am?
Morning.
How you doing, sir?
Hi, Bobby.
My question is, I listened to the president last night. With all the things that's going on around us with North Korea and these other places, are we in a position right now to have a weaker military than what we had in 9/11, or should we have a stronger military? Are we able to continue to scatter our men all over the country and leave us defenseless at home, or should our military continue to be stronger?
Well, no, they definitely have to be stronger. Let's talk. Bobby, I really am glad you asked that, because I can remember when Rumsfeld was up for his confirmation way back when he was going to be Secretary of Defense. We all remember that. And I asked him the question. I said, you know, the American people, they expect if their kids are going to be drafted and go off to war, that they have the best of everything. And they don't, and people think they do. And a good example is back in about 1992, I was in the House Armed Services Committee then before I came to the Senate. And there was a witness that said in 10 years we'll no longer need ground troops. Well, and so I told the Rumsfeld, who was up for confirmation, I said, how do you handle this? How do you demonstrate that we should have the best of everything for our kids when they go to war? He said, well, you have to go back to what we've averaged over the last 100 years. Over the last 100 years, he said, we have been spending 5.7% of our GDP on defending America. Now, he said, now keep in mind, this is back when he was up for confirmation. It was down to below 4%, and now with Obama's sequestration, that's going to be down, that could be 2%. So, Bobby, we've got to make America strong again. There was a time in this, throughout the history of this country, the number one effort here in this city of Washington was to give us the strongest military that any country has and be able to defend against all contingencies. We don't have that anymore. And if we go through sequestration, it's going to be worse. Now, you're from Alabama, so it's going to hit you even harder because the number of jobs per capita in Alabama in the defense industry is greater than any of the other 50 states.
We'll go to Jack next in Wabasha, Minnesota, independent caller. Hi, Jack.
Hi, Jack. Good morning, Greta. Greta, I have just a quick comment on a previous caller, and then I have a question for the senator.
Okay.
A caller called just recently in the Captor segment saying that Mayo Clinic didn't take Medicare patients, that is incorrect.
Okay.
For sure. Now, Senator, you criticized Iran for criticizing Israel. I am going to criticize Israel. I don't much like the state of Israel, and it's not because Israel is a nation composed of Jewish persons. It's because Israel acts, unfortunately, very much like the Nazis did. They have put settlements in occupied territory, which is absolutely against international law, and it's acknowledged as such by some of the leaders of Israel. They've also bombed Gaza repeatedly, bombed hospitals, bombed ambulances, bombed citizens. That's collective punishment, and that is also an acknowledged criminal action by international law.
All right,
Now,
Jack, I'm going to leave it there and have the senator respond.
Well, I have to say that was the most painful 30 seconds I've ever had to sit through to listen to that. The only true loyal friend we have in the Middle East is Israel, and we have worked out things with them. They're not strictly the beneficiary of our generosity. We're the beneficiary of theirs in many ways. The Iron Dome, it performed. All these things that are going on over there are things that they're erupting every day. You can't just sit back and see what's happening in the Middle East and say that Israel is not our best friend and our partner. If something happens over there that we end up in a serious problem, I want to have them by my side. So all I can say is I totally disagree. I know he's well-meaning. He's just absolutely wrong.
Okay, Leonard, Chatsworth, New Jersey, Republican caller.
Yes, good morning. My question is, it's been a long time question of mine, other people too, about the loans coming from other countries. They borrow money from our country to rebuild their country. And even in high school, my teachers in high school said that England owed us so much money, and they never repay. Now, one thing, these countries are bad-mouthing the United States, and they've borrowed money from us. There are so many loans that other countries have borrowed money from us, and they're not paying it back. Instead of, I'm not sure the term, but instead of taking money out of the U.S. citizens' pocket by all these cuts and cuts in services, why not go out of the country and call our debts or call their debts? And
all right, Leonard, we got your point. Senator?
Okay, well, actually, we're a debtor. When you've heard many people say, and I'm sure that the caller has heard people say that, when we do something, we're borrowing our money from China. And, this is true. This is a serious problem that we have. There are some things we should not be doing overseas. After Morsi got into Egypt, we should not be sending any more F-16s into Egypt. Now, we do have friends there. Frankly, I believe the military of Egypt is our friend. The Morsi is not our friend. He's the Muslim Brotherhood and all that. So I go down, I've been leading the cause to stop the flow of our F-16s into Israel. We don't want to do it in a way, though, that costs us $2.2 billion, which is what one of the that would come right out of the hide of the military. So I agree with the caller that there are problems out there. There are some groups that I would not want to support, and I have opposed. I've been the opposition in supporting them. But we got to recognize who our friends are. And friendship goes both ways, and we need our close friends.
Senator Inhofe, this is Oversight of GOP on Twitter, who says, according to the CBO, by writing our troop drawdowns into law, we save $700 billion. Why not replace sequestration cuts with this?
Well, there's something that's going on out there. First of all, 15 days from today, it's going to set in. Now, 2 weeks ago, when we saw this was coming, and the Obama sequestration was going to be cutting in two areas, domestic and defense. I'm concerned more about the defense end. And what I have done is introduced a bill to have it ready in the event this happens. I hope it can be avoided. We're going to do everything we can to avoid it. But if 15 days goes by and it's not avoided, I have already done what this guy the caller has suggested. I have talked to all five service chiefs, and they've agreed that if we go into this thing, they could take the same top line and spend the same amount of money that comes with sequestration in our defense, but rearrange it from within so it's not a cut across in a way that's very inefficient and it's going to be even more of a disaster. Let's keep in mind, this is a disaster. Even the Obama-appointed Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, says this would be a disaster for America. Well, it'd be less of a disaster if we did just what the caller is talking about and what I'm talking about.
Senator James Inhofe, Republican of Oklahoma, the top-ranking Republican on the Armed Services Committee. Thank you, sir, for talking to our viewers and spending time with us this morning.
Well, thank you, Greta.
We have just 10 minutes left here or so before the House comes into session. We're going to keep taking your phone calls, getting your reaction to President Obama's fourth State of the Union address. He spoke with about 6,000 words plus and took about an hour. He was interrupted over 70 times with applause, and talked about immigration reform, gun laws, talked about foreign policy issues, climate change. He talked about manufacturing hubs across the country, a lot of different proposals put out by the president. We also, here on C-SPAN, covered the GOP response given by Florida Republican Senator Marco Rubio and Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. If you missed those, go to our website,